It is totally off the cuff.
like
By the
every
way, I'm Carol with E Squared Productions, and that there is Tanya.
yeah, I'm T.
I'm me.
And now all of a sudden that the recording's on, it's like, I don't know what to say.
This is so funny. We can talk for hours and then push record, and all of a sudden
We've
stuff
got
goes
nothing to say.
sideways.
I don't know. We'll just stare at the camera. Oh,
Well, welcome to Off the Cuff. This is our first official recording, and rather than doing an introduction, we thought we would just say hi.
hi.
What's on your heart? What's on your mind?
Well,
Oh,
this piece around fear is up for me. So, fear is not new to me. It's something that I feel like I've been dealing with my whole life. Uh, but I'm starting to understand that the anxiety that I feel in some circumstances is sometimes unnecessary, and that fear is one of those things that I've always met. So even though it may take time to get there, I eventually meet it, and then I move through it, and then I get to the other side of it. And sometimes I've expended a lot more energy than I need to worrying about what, how, when, where of it all, and trying to control. I think the piece around I don't get to control any of it, and the coming to understand that it is what it is, move towards the things that I say that I want, and feel the fear and
mhm.
move through it. How about you? You have any experiences lately with fear?
I, yeah, actually, I've been really focused on fear a lot in the way that I've been detaching myself from that and examining it as something that's not part of who I am.
Yeah, cool.
And this is new for me because I spent most of my life in some level of fear, debilitating fear in some ways. And I think that that was a generational thing. My mom was just paralyzed by fear so much in her life. And of course, when I'm living with somebody with fear, that's what I learn.
Mhm.
So I learned to be afraid of literally everything. I remember walking to school in grade 8 and like just wanting to hide. I didn't even want to be seen. I was so fearful that people were going to see me. I'm like, well, of course, you're walking down the street. But to take this now from a, well, what's actually going on?
Mm,
And just slowing down and just being in this moment and just taking it literally one moment at a time has really changed how I look at fear.
mhm.
It doesn't always work. I'm not always able to slow it down to this moment, but when it does, it's so much easier, you know?
There's such a key to that, right, my friend? Like the slowing down piece. I've come to understand that trauma from my childhood, and the reason why I always felt like I had to move very quickly so that I was a moving target and no one would ever be able to get me, so to speak.
Mm,
And that slowing down is such a valuable piece to that, because when I'm slowed down, I am calmer. When I am calmer, I'm more in control of what's, around me, or I can see it more clearly. Control is one of those words. It's a trigger word for me. It's like, and I spent so much of my time in my 20s trying to control absolutely everything around me because I never felt in control as a child. So that piece of fear, and I remember that stuff about your mom. Like, this is how I remember this as from childhood. Like that. There's an ambulance. Who's in trouble? There's something. It was the demonstrative. Everything is something is going wrong, and it's spiraling down into this negative thing, which was handed off by my parents as well. And I think becoming more aware of it is such a huge bonus key to this growing up thing. We just turned 50 this year, and I still feel like a child.
mm.
So much.
Well, when we, speaking of our childhood, I mean, we met when we were 9 years old. And so this has been a lot of years. And some of the ways that we would gain control as kids was to, go sleep outside on the trampoline. We do these sleepovers. For those of you who don't know, oh my God, we came up with lots of stories about how to get out of what our parents or what we thought they knew. And so my mom and dad were really strict. Tanya's mom and dad were a little less strict. And so I was often sleeping over at Tanya's house because that would give us the freedom to go and do whatever the heck we wanted. We saw some pretty interesting things. And so there was this fear of getting caught, but in a way that was almost the fuel that kept things going. And it was
It
that,
was exhilarating for sure, right? Like it was so. My alarm is going off. Pardon me. Uh, I remember like the exhilaration of Nobody knows what we're doing. And plus the fact that our parents were really closed minded about, like, you're not allowed to go to the store and you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. It's like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
I'm gonna go to the store at midnight now in my pajamas because
in
I couldn't.
in my pajamas.
And
And not only did we go to the store, but we were invited to go to the pub at age 16 or 15 or whatever the heck we
we were
were.
14, dude. We were 14 in our pajamas up at Mac's convenience store.
And we got served.
We did.
Like, we were that was terrifying. That okay, we want to talk about fear. I was trembling. I thought the cops were going to be walking in the door, but worse than that, I thought my mom was going to be walking in the door.
My
I
dad would likely have been there any other night of the week, right? So
oh my god.
it was terrifying. I do remember, like, she's like, "What will you have?" And I'm like, "I feel like I need to puke on the table, fall over and faint, but I'll have a kokanee because that's what other people drink." So that's what I'm gonna have. I freaking hate beer. I hated it then, don't like it now. But I'm gonna drink this kokanee because you're gonna serve me. And then that turned into, I wonder who else will serve us, remember? And then we would go to Cactus Club, and we got served all the time.
It was funny. There was one time that we went, was it with Trina? When somebody was like, did the server come back and she's like, did you say a Coke or a kokanee? And we're like, oh, kokanee. Didn't want to change the story.
Oh,
That's what I thought I heard you say. And then she still didn't ID us. And we were, 16 years
no, we
old.
weren't that old. Good old SkyTrain took us places where we would have never gone before, right? So us Delta girls. Oh
Mhm.
Lord. And how about another piece of fear when you and I, my dad was like, "You have to be home by this time," and we were going to be late, and so I climbed off the bus thinking we'll just catch this other bus, and then it was a Sunday, so the bus wasn't coming, and you and I hitchhiked, and we stuck our thumb out, and we got picked up by some creepy guy with vacuums in his the filter cleaner.
Station wagon. It was a K car station wagon.
It's
And
true.
it was spotless. It was spotless. There wasn't like not a speck of dust.
It
And
was creepy. And you and I sat in the back seat and held hands so tight. And he kept
that was
asking
so
us where
scary.
we lived. And we're both like, "Just drop us over here." I ran all the way home. I'm not a runner. I've never been a runner. I ran all the way home that day. It was frightening. It was terrifying. And you and
That
I
was
had plenty of experiences. I mean, we snuck my car out one night later on, after, when we were 9. We were friends for a long time, and we snuck my car out, and we went and we saw that house fire. Do you remember that?
well that yeah, that was the night that the three of us all said we were staying overnight at somebody else's house and we had to find something to do all night long. And that was at like 4 in the morning. That was near the end of our overnight stay when
We
we
couldn't
felt like
tell anybody, right? We couldn't tell anybody.
no,
I mean, and talk about fear. Like, it was mesmerizing and completely, I was in awe. As fire still scares me, right? Like, I still have a
mhm,
healthy fire, or healthy fear of fire, thankfully. um,
yeah.
and the power that it has, because it really engulfed that whole house. But just watching it, like, saucer, eyes, and then not being able to say, "Hey, we saw this house fire." It was crazy, crazy, crazy. So sad to see someone's house go up. But we, the only people we could talk about it with was the two of us. So it's
And I
interesting.
remember just feeling so devastated by that. Even though that wasn't my home, I was able to project my own, what would I do in this situation? Oh my gosh, like were there pets, were there people inside? All of these treasures, all these family collectibles, and all these things that I used to think had so much value.
Uh,
My attitude around that's changed now, but that really was emotional for me. And to not be able to say something to somebody was hard. And then I think that time when we were, gosh, what were we like, maybe 13 or 14 or some 15, 16, I don't know. We used to SkyTrain from Surrey to downtown Vancouver all the time. We'd skip school and we'd just go downtown. We didn't have anything to do downtown, but we always found something to get up to. And I remember we were smoking cigarettes at the time. That was a smart move. And you flicked a cigarette butt and it went under the door into the bay at the bottom of the
so
stairs
we're
at
inside the
Granville
SkyTrain,
Station.
like us rebels, I tell you. And ultimately, we weren't terrible kids, but we did these
No.
really stupid, weird things. And you're right, my cousin Kate was there that day, and I was smoking, which I wasn't good at, but it felt like a grown up thing to do. So we were doing it. And then I flicked my cigarette and it rolled down and underneath the door. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to burn the bay down because it rolled like underneath a thing of clothing. And then I remember like all of us getting up and running outside. And I'm like, what if they could get my fingerprints off there? And you're like, don't be stupid. That can't happen. And years later, it could have. So it could have sat there in a cold case and I could have been the at fault for burning down the bay. My other story about the bay, remember when we skipped out and we were on the SkyTrain and those big escalators, like they're a 90-degree angle and it goes on forever.
That
And
was at Granville Station, yeah.
like we're going to heaven. And
Yeah.
my brother is like 2 or 3 people ahead of us. Remember? Oh my God. We called her the dragon lady. So we couldn't go back and we couldn't go forward. And I was terrified of my mom at that point in time. She was scary to me. And she didn't know we were skipping out. And obviously we didn't want her to know. So we're like ducking down, you know, like hopefully she doesn't see us on this big long SkyTrain.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh.
And
Yeah.
how we transcend fear over the years, hey? To some degree.
Yeah.
You know, being able to kind of, you know, something I learned back in 97 was, you know, the only way through it is through it.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of practicing some of that stuff ever since.
Mhm.
And taking a situation and really looking at it and what is this fear really about? Where is this coming from? And how is this affecting me?
Mhm.
And taking that breath and being willing to look foolish, to look stupid, to be embarrassed, to make a mistake, to be successful. You know, there's all this. What's on the other side of fear? There's always those questions. What's on the other side of this imaginary wall? I mean, it is imaginary. I mean, it doesn't exist, actually.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, we're talking about in conversation, which we give it this personality, this existence, but it doesn't really actually exist. It's all in the mind.
And you know, as Kyle Cease would say, we only have the now, right? So if I
Right.
only have this moment, then actually that and that, anything forward or backwards, isn't actually real. So you're
Yeah,
right, it's an illusion, right? But it's also informed by all of our experiences,
of
right? So
course.
what I'm coming to understand about, you know, some of the childhood trauma and neglect and PTSD, you know, all of those things have informed some of the ways that I've been in the world up until now. And that peace was and harmony was always something that I looked out for outside of myself, right? Like it was like a destination. When I get
Yes.
to this place, then I'll feel peaceful and happy and content, right? What I'm coming to understand through my meditation practice is peace exists right here, right now, in that very moment when I'm taking the time to just breathe, not think, you know, and try and just be. And
Mm,
so that's been the magic of just like you said, you know, that piece of trying to look at it from a different point of view instead of it being me, because I am not fear,
mhm.
but the fear comes and what can I do with it, which is examine it. And so when it's out here, then I can examine what's going on for me and then inform my response from there, as opposed to when we were younger, it was like immediate, right? So feeling the fear and oh my God. And how many times we had so many moments. And over our time together when we're recording these things, I'm sure we're going to come up with so many more stories. And some of those are my favorite. You know, I remember getting struck with fear, calling your house. You weren't at school that day. I called your house and your mother said to me, you will never see Carol again. She is grounded for the rest of her life. And I remember my heart going, oh, but she's my best friend. I have to see her. What do you mean? And then we got off the phone and I thought to myself, well, she's going to be in school, isn't she? So I'll just see her at
Mhm.
school. So
Yeah.
there's a piece of fear that was not real. It was illusion, right? And your mom was obviously very angry. As a mom, I now understand why that's so, you know, like, you say things, you're grounded forever.
Oh,
Not
man.
true, but all the same. So
I wasn't even home when you called. I
yeah.
was at my boyfriend's house at that time because I didn't want to go home because I was scared. So
Yeah.
I was right around the corner from you, actually.
Well, and the funny thing about, perspective, right? So as a teenager or a young adult and stuff like that, those things don't matter. Then all of a sudden I'm a mother
Mm,
and everything changes, right? So my perspective changes so much. And now I'm the one saying things that I'm like, oh my gosh, like when did I become my parent?
mm,
And being really careful with some of the things that I felt were unfair from our parents, the expectations, the rules, the regulations, and knowing that, it wasn't like we went, oh, yes, no problem. We'll never go anywhere and we'll just never do anything. We went covert, right? Like, how can we do this where we can sleep on the trampoline or in the camper in the driveway and still get everything that we want? Like hanging out most kids were hanging out after school. We were there at midnight because our parents wouldn't let us go there after school. So much better. So yeah, it's
so
all about
much
computers,
better.
eh? Absolutely. Too fun. Well, you
It
know
is
what? So
fun.
this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna just get on the computer, record things, and talk. This is gonna be off the cuff with T.
Me
Yeah. And
and
T.
T.
We'll
Yeah.
see where this goes. So
Yeah.
thank you for tuning in today. And we look forward to you tuning in more and more. Please hit the button underneath if you want to hear what we have to say and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to have you with us.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.